the latest episode of the Heavy Duty Hub podcast. As always, I'm Jeremy,
And I'm Chris.
and today we have with us a special guest. We have Colleen Porter. She's the owner of Rise and Thrive Mindset. Colleen, I've known Colleen for a few years now. She's been a leader in the heavy duty industry for a long time. So, with that being said, Colleen, would you like to introduce yourself? Give us a little background about yourself, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jeremy and Chris. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invite. I will kind of go back to where things started when I got into automotive. I actually was automotive before it was heavy truck. I actually went to school for an automotive marketing program because I've always been into cars. Like I've always loved cars. And I kind of knew that would also give me an edge if I went through a program that was focused on automotive and not just marketing. So it was an automotive marketing program. Started there, and from there, my first position actually out of school was at a Peterbilt dealership. So that kind of started my journey into heavy truck. And I stayed there for about 7 years, and I kind of worked my way through. I started in the new truck department as a sales coordinator and then ended up into the part side of the business, which is where I really found my groove, where I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what kind of lights me up. So I became the inventory control and purchasing manager and then moved into assistant parts manager, did some part sales, and then kind of moved into truck sales where I was like, that was not for me. I was like, no. And at the time it was medium duty Peterbilt. So imagine back in, the 90s, the late 90s, trying to sell a Peterbilt medium duty truck when International and Freightliner had things that were, good products and way cheaper. So it was a very tough go. And I was like, yeah, this is not for me. Ended up leaving there, went to Canadian Tire, which is a retailer here in Canada. A lot of people in the US don't know about Canadian Tire, but it's kind of like Walmart, but it was more automotive focused when it started. It was about tires when they first started. Then they went into automotive, and now they're kind of like a general merchandise store like Walmart, but still very focused on automotive. And I was working at their head office in Toronto, and I was a pricing analyst. So anything that was behind the counter, hard parts, I was advising the buyers on how to price in the market. So that was actually really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the corporate. It was a very corporate office that I was at. I was like going to work every day and I loved being there. And I actually just loved the pricing side of the business as well. And I kind of progressed there through a couple positions, became, I believe it was an assistant manager when an opportunity became available to start my own business with a partner. So we actually started a distribution business for, it was tuner cars at the time. They were quite popular. So mufflers and exhaust tips. And we got into that selling to Canadian Tire. So at one point I was working for Canadian Tire and actually had a business selling to Canadian Tire. So I was like, I need to just decide, okay, I got to get out of one of these. Left Canadian Tire and started this business with my partner. And we did it for probably about 14 years, but it kind of progressed as we went. We went from the auto side into power sports, and that was a really interesting business to be in as well. We actually went in, took the business from a large distributor that was in Quebec area, and then bought from them and sold it to Canadian Tire. So it was it was a pretty bold move, but it actually worked out for us. We did that, and then we eventually moved into an action camera. So you're both familiar with GoPro, I'm sure.
Yes.
But at the time, they were very focused on their automotive customers, or sorry, their power sports customers, and really high end athletes. So they weren't really interested in the average Joe and what they were, kind of the dumb stuff that they were filming. So we brought in a camera that was more for the average person and also for all of our automotive clients that we dealt with over the years. And it was actually quite successful. We called it Wasp Cam, and it grew to probably a $2 or $3 million business, and super fun to be involved in it. And we would go over to China, like we would source everything, and then we would bring it back, package it all in our brand name. And it actually went quite well for a few years. And then we had another partner that we brought on, and things kind of started to go sideways there with the partner. So we were like, okay, we need to figure out our strategy to kind of move out of this. And we were approached by Cobra Electronics, which, as you know, is a large company, and they do radar detectors and the CBs, like a lot of
Right.
the trucks. We ended up selling to them, which was really great for our business. It was great for us because we wanted to kind of exit, and it was an opportunity for us to get out of that. So we got out of the business, sold it to them, worked for them for maybe 8 or 9 months, just transitioning the business, all of our vendors, customers, inventory, that kind of stuff. And then when I left there, I was like, man, what do I want to do now? I've had my own business for this long. I've been out of the industry. I don't even know what I want to do. So I actually went and worked for Keystone Automotive, which is a warehouse distributor for performance parts. And I was there for, I think it was maybe 6 months as I was their OE. I would go out and talk to the OEs about performance parts. Really tough gig because the OEs were like, I don't know if I want to put an aftermarket part on because of liability issues.
Right.
And then, companies like Ford started bringing out their own performance parts. So I was like, I don't know if I see a future in this. I don't know if this is where I want to stay. Then I was contacted by a Freightliner dealership, which is Premier Truck Group, which is quite large, it was owned by Penske, actually. And they were like, we're looking for a parts manager. And I'm like, yeah, that's parts. That's the one I'm passionate about. I want to get back into that. And it was just my chance to get back into the truck industry. I've been out of it for so long. So I said yes to that position. I was there for 2 years at their biggest location in Mississauga. I think we did 2.5 million a month in sales. So it was quite a large location. And did that for 2 years and then was headhunted by International. As you know, Jeremy, I started working for, was Navistar at the time. Their name has changed so many times, it's hard to keep up with it, but now it's International again. Was headhunted for them to be a business development manager for the CAP program, which was Commercial Acceleration Program, which basically we would go out and teach dealers how to improve their parts business. So took over, actually started there as a manager, and then within 6 months I took over the team because our manager was retiring. Took over the team as the manager of the director of the Commercial Acceleration Program, and did that for about 4 years. And then, as you know, they were bought out by Traton. Lots of changes, lots of people just gone from that company. A lot of the upper management, and I ended up being restructured in 2024. And I originally was like not happy about that, but I eventually took some time just to reflect on my career and what I had done, and it's like, you know what, this is actually a gift. It gave me the time to really think about what do I want to do going forward. And I had done a lot of coaching when I was at International, and just natural conversations, nothing that was formal or structured, but I just really found satisfaction in that and helping people and giving them advice and seeing them take the advice and actually become successful using it. So I was like, well, maybe there's something here. And I know all of the struggles that I went through in my career over the years. There was a lot because I was a lot of times the only female in some of these businesses. So I thought, I think I'd like to help women in male dominated industries just progress a little bit faster, get their feet under them a little bit faster, and help them feel like comfortable being themselves in that industry and that they could be successful. So hence why I started Rise and Thrive Mindset in May of 2024. And I haven't looked back since. It's been very fulfilling, and it's something that I want to continue doing for a long time.
And that's something me and Chris definitely relate to. You know, being in the industry as long as we all have been in it, there's so much satisfaction in seeing somebody that actually, that light bulb goes off and you can see it that they get it, they understand when you're coaching or teaching, whether it be a class or an individual, there is so much satisfaction in that.
Yes.
And we all love the industry so much. We've been in it our whole lives. We love it. It's a interesting industry. It's a very small industry because you know everybody in
It
it.
is. Yeah, it
Uh,
is.
But it's also a very aggressive industry, and sometimes it's a very cutthroat industry.
Yeah.
So being able to get into the positions we're in now, where we can actually do what we love to do, which is teach and coach, it's a really great thing.
Yeah.
And that's when I saw that you had started that website and your coaching, it was really interesting to me. Like the one thing on your site, you mentioned the 5 key things that you need. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. So it's actually kind of morphed a little bit. I actually probably need to update my website as things change as you go along. But basically, what I do is I help women in male dominated industries build authority so that they can land the promotions and pay that they've earned. And I want to be really clear about what that means. Oftentimes women are already doing the work, but they don't have the title or the pay. And this is something quite common. We are the softer sex. We do tend to soften our language and we do tend to kind of hang out in the background. So it's natural for us to be that way. So what I wanted to try to do was have a 6 week program that I take women through with those pillars, which are now, I've kind of morphed it into 6 pillars. I start with, we talk about self belief and self worth. We need to start there because if we're telling ourselves that we're not valuable or that we're not worthy or that we can't do the position or that nobody's going to believe us in the position, we need to fix that first before we can move forward with anything else. So that's usually where I start in my program, is going through some exercises, just seeing like where are you telling yourselves things that are not actually true. We need to get that pillar down first. Then we move into owning your expertise because once you have that belief in yourself, most of these women have the experience. It's just that they don't believe that they can use that in their position. So it's getting them to own, what do you actually know? Yeah, you know what you're talking about. You know what you're doing. So we need to own that expertise so that other people feel confident in what we're bringing to the table. Because if we don't own it, then no one else is going to look at you and go, oh, yeah, she knows what she's talking about. But oftentimes you'll find when you get into a meeting, you start talking and people are like, oh, she actually does have experience and she does know what she's talking about. But it's getting that out there sooner so that you don't always have to spew your resume and so people go, oh, well, you've been in it for 30 years, you must know what you're talking about. Even someone who's been in it for 10 years knows what they're doing, but they need to project that properly. Then once we get the owning expertise piece down, we move into speaking up and being heard. Because again, it's really important that we speak up when we're in meetings because we have ideas. We know they're good ideas, but often we're scared to share it. But it's also speaking up the right way. It's not softening our language to say stuff like, oh, I just wanted to say this, or I think this is a bad idea, but we have a tendency to really soften again, which we just want to bring our point across because
Right.
when we do that, that's with conviction and people go, oh, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Instead, what happens is we might say something like that. And then in a future meeting, someone else brings it up and runs with it. And you're like, wait a minute, that was my idea. But you didn't bring it with conviction. So
Yeah.
people did not actually listen to it. Right. So making the shifts in our language to make sure that we're coming across the right way. And speaking up when we actually have something important to say. Not just, we don't speak up just because we want to talk, because I find there's a lot of meetings where people are just talking, not really saying anything. That's not the goal of speaking up. It's being clear and actually having something of value to add to the conversation. And I think a lot of times as women, we're like, oh, I got to get in there. Like, I got to make sure that I'm speaking up. And we don't want to do that because that just devalues our message. Then from there, we want to make sure that our communication is proper and we're asking for the feedback that is actually going to propel us forward. So when somebody says to you, you did a great job, what does that mean? That's very vague. What did
Yeah.
I do great? How can I continue to do that? Like, what would you like to see more of? So it's making sure you're asking the right questions. Because as you know, a lot of people that get into management positions have no idea how to manage people. They just
No,
don't. So,
not
and
at
that's not
all.
their fault. It's not their fault, right? So how can you get better feedback from them if they've never been trained how to do it? You have to make sure that you're asking the right questions. So we talk a lot about that. Then I move into sustainable boundaries. And, you were talking, Jeremy, before we got started about, just going and going and going and going. And eventually, yeah, you're going to burn out. That's what happens. And for women, they're taking on many more things than just coming to work every day. And if they are just going and going, going, yes, they are going to burn out. So it's important to have boundaries in place, understanding that we don't talk about work-life balance because we all know there is no such thing. Sometimes it's going to be
Yeah.
100% work and zero personal, and then it's going to change around. But you do have to have boundaries in place where you say, okay, no, at 5 o'clock today, I'm done. I'm shutting off my computer. I am going to go out and do something that fills up my cup. Because if you don't do that, again, what good are you coming back to the company? You're
Right.
just not going to be valuable to yourself or the company. Then the last piece we get into, which is really, really important, is leadership presence. So showing up as the leader before those opportunities ever become available or even on the radar. Because if you're already showing up as a leader and you have those skills and you're showing that behavior, people are going to notice that. And when those opportunities come up, they're going to be like, hey, I think this person would be a good fit because she already has these behaviors. She's already acting like a leader. She's like the natural fit. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but it's definitely better than, you know, the messages that we get are like, just keep your head down. You know how many times I've heard that? Hey, Colleen, just keep your head down. Just keep working hard and it'll happen. Well, that's not
Yeah,
true.
that yeah,
That's just
that
not,
never works.
never works, right?
Never
So,
works.
right. So we want to make sure that we have the skills and we're building that presence, as I said, so that when the opportunities do come up, they're like, yeah, she's a natural fit because she's already exhibiting that behavior. So that's kind of what I walk the women through in the program. And usually before we begin, I do a survey. I have a what's your blind spot, your confidence blind spot survey. So I can kind of see where their scores are low. And then we do the survey again at the end. And I'm seeing typically from the clients I've worked with about a 30% difference. Now keep in mind it's only 6 weeks, right? So that's
Yeah.
actually a huge increase. And it's something that they take forward with the rest of their lives through their career, right? It's not a one-time thing. It continues to go on. But in 6 weeks, we're seeing not just the not just the thought process, but behavior. They're taking the tools and using them and actually seeing that, oh, this actually works. I can actually move forward quicker. So it's pretty exciting. And it's, like I said, it's something I'm super passionate about. And I just love helping women get to where they want to get to in their careers.
I think what you're doing is great. I mean, I've been very fortunate in my career in several different dealers that I've worked for, as well as where I work currently, just coming across prominent women in the industry that have really broken down the barriers. And I think the hardest part for me as someone who didn't grow up in this industry or come from it from the start, I
Mhm.
have a different perspective on women in the industry as
Mhm.
opposed to, there's some stigmas I think out there that over
Yeah.
time they're definitely getting lessened and broken down because again, as a whole, the industry needs people to survive and function. And if you try to fit only a round peg in a square hole every time, eventually you're going to break. It doesn't work. So you've got to kind of, I think, adapt. And I think what you're doing, it's such a unique perspective
Yeah.
and it's needed. It's just, it's insane to me just how I have had, and I'll share an experience real quick. Just, I had a manager, we were doing interviews hiring a counter person.
Mhm.
And of the 15 applicants we were interviewing in a day, one was a female. She was the very last one of the day. Just worked out that way. And we went through, and finally it was about time. And I'm like, I've got a 2 hour drive home. I'm probably, what you're doing now. I'm going to head out. And the manager said to me, yeah, I'm probably not going to just stick this very long because I'm afraid of bringing that in, what it's going to do to the environment of the parts department. And I'm like, wait a second, what? Yeah, it's all guys. If I bring a girl in, it could just potentially go sideways. Said, I'm going to stay for this one. So good thing I did. She's worked there now. Gosh, let me think. See, 9 years. She's one of the best employees. Several years later, I went back to the manager, who even after the interview, to me, clearly leaps and bounds. She was like number one on the list of all 15.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, 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 I can't do it. I can't do it. So 3 years later, I asked him and I said, hey, looking back on that day when we interviewed all those people, he's like, you were so right. But if I didn't stay for that last one, she would have never gotten a chance just based on the stigma of being a female.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like it's very common. I think it's still common that mindset is there. And I know you said like, oh, it's getting better. Well, I challenge that a little bit because when I started in the industry, things were very out there, like in your face. People would just say stuff to you and there were no repercussions. And you'd be like,
Right.
why am I dealing with this?
Yes.
And when I came back to the industry and people would say to me, don't things have really changed? I'm like, uh, that like it's I think it's just under the surface. It's still there. They still
Yeah.
have that mindset. It's still there. So I challenge people when they say things have really changed. They yeah, on the surface, I think that they have. But I'll give you an example. You know Patricia Wagasbeck, right? That used to work
Yes.
at
Mm-hmm.
so I love this story because, and it's her story. She should probably tell it, but she told it to me, and I use it quite often to prove that things have not really changed as much as people think. She went to a conference and it was she's with a multi-fuel services company, so it's very male dominated as well. The top 3 people in their company, or the 3 women that they sent to this, was 3 women that they sent to the conference, and they're all sitting around a table, and there's men sitting around, and this one gentleman says to her, "So what company you guys from?" "Oh, multi-fuel services." "They sent all women?" And she's like, "Yeah, we sent all women. So there's no men from your company here?" And he just could not understand that there was only women from that company and no men. And she was just looking at him like, seriously, like, are you actually like vocalizing that? And it wasn't just a one-time thing. He went on about it all day, like all day. So I do say, like, yeah, maybe on the surface things are better, but I still think we have a lot of work to do. So I'll just leave you with that.
No, that's a great assessment, 100%. Thank you for correcting myself.
No, not correcting, just challenging.
No, I need it. I need it sometimes. So
Well,
Well, we all
and
do.
the other thing you hit on too earlier, when you were explaining the website,
Mhm.
and it seems to be no matter who you are in our industry, there really isn't that training out there. It's very few of us that actually do the training and teach these people, number one, the reason why you need to do what you need to do in order to make the department profitable, the company profitable.
Yeah.
But we've talked about it probably at least 10 times on our podcast in the past. Traditionally, your best counter guy is automatically your next manager. Your
Yeah.
best technician is automatically your foreman.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they know how to do the job. It doesn't mean that they have the training. It doesn't mean that you're going to give them the training. It just means that they were the best person you had at the time. So a lot of times when people are thrown into these positions, they just don't have that knowledge. You talked about building confidence, and it's hard to build that confidence when you really don't know what you're doing. So having the training out there, having that coaching available to them to get that confidence level up, to give them the direction they need to go in order to succeed, it's so important, and it's so lacking in our industry.
Yeah.
So that's we talked about it right before we got on this podcast. That's what we all three love. We love that coaching and that teaching and being able to impart that knowledge onto others so that they can be better at their job, and so they can then in turn do it with other people and bring them along also.
Correct. Yeah. It's all about that paying it forward, right? And I think when you get further down in your career, you realize that making an impact is much more important than the money or the position, and for me that's kind of the aha moment that I had when I was restructured. Okay, like, you know what, this is not what I want anymore. I don't want to be in the corporate business. I don't want to maybe work at the dealership level. I want to help people who are still wanting to be in those positions and moving up. I want to have more of an impact in helping them get to where they want to get to, and especially women. I've never said that I would turn somebody away if they needed help, but again, I am a woman and I know how it works in the industry, and I know the things that I had to deal with. So I know what other women are dealing with. So obviously it's a natural fit for me to coach women, but I would never turn someone away. But I also you need to focus because you can't be everything to everybody. That saying is just so true.
Right. In We love having you on. You've got such a rich background. You've basically done everything in the business. I think we both have along the way. But just how would people get in touch with you? And of course, Chris is going to edit all this stuff in, so it'll be on the screen. But how do they get in touch with you? How do they get this knowledge from you?
They can go to my website. So that's www.riseandthrivemindset.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm pretty present on there. I'm posting pretty much every day, and all my contact information is also on there. That's probably the easiest way. Most of the people that I'm connected with are on LinkedIn. I also have Instagram and Facebook, maybe not as active on those channels, probably mostly on LinkedIn. But those are the different ways that they can contact me.
Great. And would you be willing to come back for more? Because I've been just absolute dialed in. For a minute there, I forgot I was hosting a podcast. I was just dialed in listening to you. It's like, wait a minute, I got to ask her a question. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'd love to have you back and talk some more. Um, yeah, Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
We,
I'd love the whole training
yeah.
piece that you just talked about how, like, how do we actually make this sustainable so it continues? How do we put plans in place? Because again, as you know, dealerships are not great at putting that kind of work in place. How do we do that so that it can kind of become one of those things that it just kind of keeps going on its own? I would love to talk about that stuff for sure.
Yeah, because all dealerships, I mean, they have product training. They'll teach you about a product and how to sell a product.
Yeah.
They don't teach you how to do
Yeah.
your job.
Dealers struggle pretty heavily with creating foundational pieces to build off of. It's the flavor of the month, and then they move on.
Yeah.
But having those foundational pieces to really, okay, we have a good foundation, let's put walls up, or
Yeah.
it doesn't happen typically in most.
Well, let me share this. I am working on something else. I'm working on something called counter to command, which would actually be taking counter people and service people, people that are at that lower level. How do we move that up into those positions and how do we prepare them to actually be effective when they get there? So I am working on that as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
So we can talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yes, we'll definitely have you back on for sure.
I
And
would
we're
love
up
that.
against it as always.
Yeah.
Our strict time limit, we always now blow over because we've had such a great range of guests, and Colleen, you're definitely one of them. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
I
having
only
me.
got, I think, one question, and I was sitting there going, I've got to ask a question. I've got so many.
I talk so much. I talk so much. I know. I'm sorry.
No. Oh no. It's you and Jeremy and myself included. We have a podcast. We like to talk.
Yeah. Well,
So
Colleen, again, we thank you so much for coming on today, and we look forward to having you on again. Please like, subscribe. Please send us anything that you would like us to talk about, any guests you'd like us to have on, anything in the industry that's on your mind, reach out to us. And as always, Chris will put all the information up on the screen for you. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And Chris, I'll let you sign us off.
yeah, thanks everybody. As Jeremy said, my favorite tagline, like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks everybody.